Hey guys, how you doing today? Today's video is going to be a little bit different than what I typically do with the walk and talk because one of my new Patreons, has asked me to speak on the issue of how do we actually get anything done, right? How do we confront capital, and how do we actually get it done? So I think so if you're here for the classic walk and talk stuff, but you're not interested in this, please like, share, subscribe, right? Send it around, do your normal stuff. And hey, think about becoming a Patreon, because I do videos for Patreons. And hey, I could use the support. All right. So let's start by actually talking about what is the system we're talking about, right? Like who's in control of this thing for the as much as somebody can be in control of it, and then what can we do about it? So chances are good that if you're living in Western society, you are working for a wage, right? That means that you are being paid a tiny little stipend of what your actual value is worth, and that the surplus of your value, the surplus of what you create, is actually given to somebody else, right? In kind of a penny capitalism sort of way, like if you're a small business owner, for example, chances are good that you work in your business, right? That you are one of the workers, but you also have this other vested interest of ownership. But in the end, you're taking the surplus value of the people who work for you. Uh, uh, and if you're a small-time owner, right, the justification is, well, then I take that and I reinvest it back into my business to have it grow. And this was always the justification of the neoliberal project through the last 40 years, that it was completely fine to cut taxes for the wealthiest people. It was completely fine to subsidize the wealthiest people. All the focus was on the wealthiest people in the society because, as the mantra went, they were going to turn around and reinvest it into the society. So, as we can see after 40 years of that, that was a dupe. They did nothing of the sort. They took all the subsidies that we gave them, they took all the tax breaks that we gave them, and they jammed all of the wealth that they created into offshore accounts, where they, to help nobody and do nothing, right? That literally for them it is just a game. It is just a game. Who's the wealthiest person? Who's the best billionaire, right? And this is indicated by who has the most amount of wealth in their offshore accounts. So take someone like here in Canada, the richest man, David Thompson, right? David Thompson is a hereditary billionaire. His official title is the third Baron of Fleet. He is a billionaire by birth. He was born into it. And this is the typical story for most billionaires, right? That that their wealth comes from generations of being set up for it, that they typically are heavily subsidized by the state, and typically their genius innovation is usually just privatized public sector research, right? This is the case for, like, take a look at someone like Bill Gates, right? Bill Gates took personal computer technology, which had been researched and developed by the public sector in the United States for upwards of 100 years. And just when it was about to become an actual product that people could use, Bill Gates bribes the right person, takes the project for himself, has it privatized, and in this way has all of the research and development subsidized by the state, that's you and me, paying our taxes, but then privatizes all the profits for himself, right? And this is typically the way that capitalists operate, that they're not interested in actually researching or developing or building anything, right? They're not interested in discovering anything whatsoever. What they're interested in is having the public sector do all that work, your taxes do all that work, so that they can privatize it by bribing officials, and then walk away with all the profits for themselves, the privatizing profits. And this goes down to, like, the very, very basis of how the society works, right? The key antagonism that's built into the society. The key antagonism is that you work for a wage, that you work for a capitalist, right? You work for a wage. The capitalist wants that wage to be zero. If capitalists could set your wage at zero, they would, right? they've shown it over and over and over again, right? We had to fight. The Americans had to fight a civil war over it. There was this whole conflagration of chattel slavery. We got rid of the chattel slaves. We didn't get rid of wage slavery, right? Which is the current system that we're under right now. And the capitalists work very hard to find new methods to enslave people. Internships, free labor that the capitalists steal from the society. Temporary foreign work programs, right? This is a form of slavery to drive wages down through wage enslavement. And you have lots of the offshoring of manufacturing through NAFTA, like the offshoring of good paying jobs to places who are having the people do the same work for 5 cents a day, that kind of thing. Allowing our manufacturing base to ship itself all over the world, so that our stuff gets made by slave labor in other nations, right? This is how capitalism propagates itself. Capitalism requires slavery to function, because ultimately what a capitalist is a person who does no work, doesn't participate in any of the manufacturing or actual decision making of how anything actually happens. But they just take the benefits for themselves. They take all the surplus value for themselves. They take the product that actually gets made and they end up owning it, as opposed to the workers who actually do all the work and provide all the value, but get paid a survival stipend and told that if they want to do better, they have to work harder by people who do no work and don't participate in labor whatsoever. If they've never worked a day in their life, right? And we're talking about people like David Thompson. We're talking about, and David Thompson's case is actually very interesting, because David Thompson doesn't actually own anything, right? He owns little pieces of everything, but he doesn't own everything. The way that there are shares in the society, right? Like a company has a whole, like, millions of shares that they sell publicly, right? And someone like David Thompson just owns like 10-20% of all the businesses on the stock market, right? You spread out this huge, gigantic portfolio, and you actually do a mathematical calculation. Not David Thompson, of course. He doesn't do any work. He's a completely worthless parasite in our society. But the people he hires to do the work for him, they just do a mathematical computation, and they just find out, like, okay, like once you hit $1 billion, like you literally can't get under $1 billion ever again, the way that the system is structured, because you just have all this money. So you just take your money and give it to people, and they make more money, and you get to go drink martinis and don't do anything of value, right? So the capitalists own everything, do no work. If they could pay you $0, they would, right? And so what they've done, of course, then is that they when capitalists talk about investing in the society, what they actually mean is buying the government, right? Buying the political organizations that exist in the society. The Conservative Party and the Liberal Party are completely bought. There's no salvaging that, right? That if you are voting Conservative or if you are voting Liberal, you are voting for a capitalist system. That the only difference that actually exists between the Liberals and the Conservatives is that the Liberals want to fly a pride flag and have a diverse cabinet, but and the Conservatives don't, right? That's the primary difference between the two of them. But when it comes to economics, when it comes to capitalism, the two parties are actually tightly allied. They actually vote unanimously along pro-capitalist lines. So when we're talking about what can be done about this and how do we actually figure things out, you cannot organize with conservatives and liberals. Like, you can't. It's just not. You are going to be dead-ended, right? And liberals are especially dangerous, because liberals will actually talk a leftist game, because they know that people are left-wing and they want to be left-wing, and so they want your vote, right? They want you to vote along with them, And so they'll absolutely lie to you and say that they're interested in leftist ideas and leftist politics and leftist things, but they're liars, right? They're effective liars. And in many ways, this makes them worse than the conservatives, because the conservatives aren't going to lie to you about that kind of stuff. Conservatives have dark politics that are interested in the permanent enslavement of an underclass, but they'll be very upfront about that. They're not going to lie to you about it. They think it's to the benefit of the society to enslave you, and will just say, well, you need to enslave other people, or you need to work harder as a slave, right? Those are conservative responses. The way liberals work, though, is they'll say, yeah, we'll fight to make sure that you have more rights and make sure that you're no longer a slave, and then they'll just keep enslaving you. Like, they'll continue the policies set out by the conservatives, or they'll continue to lie to you. Or they'll create new policies, right? All with the objective of maintaining the personal wealth of David Thompson and Galen Weston and the billionaire class, right? The oligarchs that actually control what happens in those political parties. And just as a side note, it pays to be like completely aware of what news organizations these billionaires own, right? So like Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post, for example. David Thompson owns the Globe and Mail. The National Post was created by Conrad Black, but now is owned by someone else. Of course, I'm blanking on them, but it's owned by like the billionaire class. And it's important to know these things. It's important to know that the media is largely owned and operated by the billionaire class, because that's why you don't see any critiques of the billionaire class in our media, right? It just doesn't happen. And so one would think, oh, okay, well, the obvious thing that we need to do now is to join the NDP or the Greens, right? They're not conservative or liberal. Well, unfortunately, the billionaire class has been paying attention to them as well, right? Because they're perfectly... They can see polls the way that I can see polls, right? Like, they know that the society is turning against capitalism. They know that the society is steadily marching to the left. And they know that it is an inevitability that the conservatives and the liberals are abandoned, right? And it is an inevitability that happens. That's already happened throughout Europe, that their classic liberal conservative alliance parties, pro-capitalist parties, have been completely decimated. And capitalists have been have needed to make inroads with other organizations and other parties. And so the NDP here in Canada, the New Democratic Party, which has a lot of union support and a lot of and is probably the only actual union party, is still being infected and invaded by these pro-capitalist forces, right? That even though it's a party that's supposed to represent the demands of unions, it is still very interested in propping up this system of capital, which promulgates parasites who do no work and provide no value, right? They just have so much money that they can bribe as many party officials as they want to support the capitalist system. So, this is a long-form way of me saying, if you take your $5 and you give it to the NDP, and then you go vote at the NDP voting booth, congratulations, you've just supported the capitalist cause. You're not doing anything to actually improve your lot. So what can be done? Okay. Well, what can actually be done is that you join a third-party, non-affiliated political organization. So, I have chosen Socialist Action as my own. Socialist Action is a socialist group that has socialist ideals. They want to encourage workers and independent worker movements, and most importantly, they want to smash the back of capital. This is very, very important, right? You need to join groups that have the explicit and stated agenda of destroying capitalism, not attempting to reform it because it's not reformable, not attempting to negotiate with it because you're negotiating with people who are attempting to destroy you and enslave you, You need to join groups that have the explicit stated agenda of the destruction of capitalism. And anytime there is, and here's the real truth. Anytime there is a some kind of meetup on the street, right? You need to go and you need to bring friends. This is actually how politics truly works, right? That if at the end of the day it is a numbers game, right? If 100,000 people take to the streets demanding something, you're going to see some kind of movement on it. So here in Toronto, there was a climate change rally, and over 100,000 people were on the streets. Okay, that was the end of climate change denial in Canada. That that the Conservative Party like literally scrubbed from its policies any kind of climate change denialism. The Liberals actually had to begin moving forward with a climate change agenda of some kind. They had to at least pretend as though they cared about climate change, and they had to at least put forward the itsy bitsy, tiniest, teeniest, itsy bitsy, weeny policies to address the climate change issue. And it happened because 100,000 people took to the streets, right? You can't ignore that. That's not possible to ignore that. And that's the kind of organization that actually moves and motivates politicians and political officials, because they have to respond to it. Because if you go out into the streets and there's 100,000 people around you, you can see each other. You can look at one another. You can say, okay, there is support for this. I am not crazy. I am not isolated. Because that's how capitalists really gain power, is by isolating people. By isolating people into their own tiny little groups. By ensuring that you're off in your little corner and keep gaslighting you, keep saying that the way that you feel, oh, it's just you that feels that way. Everybody else feels differently. Capitalism's working for everyone else. You must be the crazy one. But it's when big, enormous, large-scale protests occur, and capitalism generates them because it doesn't actually offer solutions to problems. It just enslaves and destroys everything and steals resources from people. And so organizing yourself and organizing with other people in order to join protest movements, to get out onto the street, this is actually how and then also organizing with those people in a political bloc, right, that isn't aligned to any one specific party, right? That's how you actually gain power. Because Socialist Action, for example, it works with the NDP, but it is not beholden to the NDP. So they don't actually have to listen to anything the NDP actually says. And if they so chose, they could just move and vote Green, right? If it was politically advantageous for them to do so. And this is how you gain power as a political movement. You don't ally yourself with the pro-capitalist parties, right? Except out of complete convenience. And the goal being to either push the party in the direction of the policies that you like, or to just take the party over. Because at the end of the day, it is just a numbers game, right? If you show up with 100,000 people and they show up with 1,000 people, you win. And there's no amount of finagling or political showmanship or fussing or mussing or any of that kind of stuff that can change that. If you show up with overwhelming numbers to vote in favor of a policy or an idea, you win. And that's just the truth. That sure, the political parties can try to manipulate the numbers and try to create little rules and fuss and muss and all that kind of stuff. But if you have 100,000 people and they have 1,000 people, you win. And that's the lines that we need to be organizing on. It has gotten to this point that electoral politics, which is to say, like, just throwing a donation towards the NDP and then going to vote in a ballot box, isn't going to get it done. It's not going to get it done, because at the end of the day, the NDP are just as beholden. Like someone like Jagmeet Singh, he's just as corruptible, right? He's just as corruptible as Justin Trudeau. The capitalist class can walk up to them and walk up to him and say, hey, once you're out of politics, so I've got a nice cushy job over here, pay 6 figures, you don't have to do anything. Join the capitalist class, be worthless, just like us. We're just parasites. We suck on we suck on the back of the working class. You could too. It's very appealing. It's worked for Justin Trudeau. It's going to work for Aaron O'Toole, right? All of the Stephen Harper, right? These guys, they don't actually provide value. They don't actually do work. And so this gives them, and because they've got the overwhelming financial power in the society, we do have to respond with organizing under third-party banners, such as Socialist Action, and involving ourselves in every single protest movement we possibly can. Because the only way to actually convince the political class to do something in this society is to show up with overwhelming numbers and to vote in blocks. That's the only way that anything will actually get done, or anything does get done. And it needs to be explicitly stated, right? The goal and the agenda is to destroy capitalism, right? The climate change movement here in Canada is popular, but nobody wants to actually get behind the truth of it, which is that there is no such thing as an anti-climate change society that is also capitalist, right? That capitalism thrives on death, destruction, enslavement, and theft, right? That is how it communicates in the world, and it can't be reformed. There's no such thing as nice capitalism. And so again, you need to find organizations. I recommend Socialist Action, right? Because I like their leadership. I like who they are. You need to get involved in protest movements. You need to involve the people around you in protest movements. You need to be the one who actually pushes that forward, and you need to be the one to actually organize these things, because there is no alternative. The alternative is that we work for capitalists until we die. That's the alternative, and I don't accept that, and I don't think anybody else should either. That capitalism is a dead system that is on the path to destroy not only our society but our species, and if we don't actually start to take seriously the fact that it is a structural issue, that is a structural problem where most of the society slaves away for subsistence wage, while the beneficiaries are out of touch, detached sociopaths who don't know anything, do no work, and provide no value whatsoever. If we don't accept that that is a structural issue that we need to confront, and if we don't do it soon, we won't be able to walk this ball back. That climate change will wipe us out, that large-scale conflagrations, war, will wipe us out. And it is only a matter of time if we continue down this path the way we have been, which is quietly with our heads down. We are going to be wiped out, and it's not going to be pretty. We are already in a new neo-feudal structure, right? We are already in a structure where we have people who are owned and we have owners, and as things get meaner and tighter, and as resources become sparser and more difficult to attain, those lines are going to be clearer and clearer. And if we don't organize now, in order to say to the billionaire class that they are not valuable, that they need to be gone from our society, then when the rubber hits the road and we need to be organizing out of desperation and disaster, it's going to be far too late, right? Because capitalists are much better at getting things done during periods of disaster than we are, right? That's how capitalists operate. When things explode, they know how to make a lot of money while we're picking up the lives that they blew up. Okay. I think I've talked enough about that subject. You got to join third-party political organizations. You've got to go out to every protest that you can. You've got to bring as many people as you can, because at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. It is a numbers game. That if you want to get your agenda put forward, and your agenda should be the wholesale destruction of capitalism, right? The removal of assets from the capitalist class and the transfer of those assets into the hands of the working class. If you want that to happen, you've got to organize in voting blocks, and you've got to organize in protest blocks. There is no alternative. Okay. If you've made it here and you're not subscribed, I think you have to. I think that's the rules. If you like what you see, please give it a like. Like, share, subscribe, you guys. I'm trying to make daily content. I'm trying to make good content. I'm trying to get us organized and trying to get us aware that we have to organize in large political blocks outside of the established political parties, because the established political parties have been bought by capitalists. The people who are operating within them are operating on pro-capitalist lines, and capitalism is going to destroy us. Like, this is a black and white issue to me now. Like, if you're going to come to me and try to pretend like capitalism can do anything but destroy us, I just think you're out to lunch. I just think you're not looking around. And and this is how we need to be talking about it, and this is how we need to be communicating it, and we need to do so with a sense of urgency, because there is a ticking clock on this, and the capitalists are happy to let that bomb explode, based on a very, very simple premise, right? It is better to rule in hell than serve in heaven, right? They would rather the place be on fire and be your owner than for us to be equals and things to be kind of nice. That is the core truth of it, which is why capitalism needs to be expunged as a system, and all assets need to be transferred into the hands of the working class, and the capitalist class needs to be eliminated as soon as possible. Okay, this is the end of me, guys. Do not let these guys gaslight you, right? Capitalists they spend billions and billions of dollars propagandizing you with PR firms and advertising firms to gaslight you and convince you and to isolate you. Don't let them isolate you. Find an organization. Join an organization. Vote as a block. Vote as a unit. That's how you gain power. Okay. Good luck. We're going to need it.